The Light from the Inside. Conversations with active members of the Light of the World Church about the transformative power of the doctrine of Jesus Christ. Fathers, mothers, husbands, wives, sons, and daughters whose lives have been impacted and improved by the teachings of the apostolic doctrine. Welcome to the Footsteps of My Life, an ongoing series here at the Light from the Inside podcast, where our guests share personal testimonies of their past and present and how their lives have changed thanks to the message preached by the Apostle of Jesus Christ in the Light of the World Church. Welcome back to another episode of The Light from the Inside. I am Leo Fontes, and by God's grace, this will be the 32nd episode and testimony that I've been able to capture and share. And to help with this project today, I have Sister Marisol Reyes Bautista, who will be sharing her life experiences as a member from the Light of the World Church to give testimony from the inside what it is truly like to form a part of the Light of the World Church. If you're tuning in as a listener who is not currently a member of the Light of the World Church, I want you to know that this podcast, these testimonies and conversations are all being produced with you in mind, because it is our desire that you hear firsthand from current active members of the Light of the World Church how the church itself, its doctrine, its teachings, its members, and most importantly, the Apostle of Jesus Christ, Naason, Joaquin, Garcia, how they have all impacted us all in different ways. And it is our privilege to share with you these stories to testify how God has blessed our lives abundantly even to this day. So if you're tuning in, my desire is that the Lord bless you and reward you for doing so, as they are His works that we seek to share with you in each and every episode of this podcast. That being said, Sister Marisol, welcome to the show, and God pay you for contacting me and making this possible today.
Amen, brother. God pay you for having me on, and very nice to meet you. Even though it's over Zoom.
Amen. Well, sister, as I was sharing with you right before we started, the inspiration behind this project, first of all, is the Apostle of the Lord, who always invites us to just give our testimony of how the Lord has worked in our lives.
Amen.
That's the main inspiration behind this project. Secondly was the hymn I mentioned to you, number 462, that we sing in our prayer services, our worship services, which reads, how it is lovely to bring to remembrance where the Lord has brought us from, where the Lord has saved us from. For some, that has been by way of conversion. For others, it has been by way of being born in the church and then having distanced himself for some time, and the Lord allows him to return. But regardless, it's beautiful to remember and never forget where the Lord saved us from.
Amen.
I've had some guests recently that have never left the church, and they have their gratitude goes to the Lord. I could only imagine where in the fact that their parents were saved, at one time, or their grandparents, or even their great-grandparents. But it's the motivation behind this project. So God pay you again for your collaboration with it.
Amen, brother.
Before we begin with your testimony, there are some announcements that I need to make for the listeners, those that are following the show. A bit of bad news, but with some good reasons behind it. So far, I've been able to publish these episodes once a week. I've aimed for every Monday. Some of those have fallen into Tuesday releases, but I'm going to have to cut back for the time being to every other week. The reason being, I have the blessing to collaborate in another project, BVTV, where I do some Think Green commercials for them. And I've kind of been falling behind on that. So I don't want to lose out on that opportunity and blessing. So I got to juggle my time there. Another being that my father, we just celebrated his 80th birthday yesterday. I graduated in 2020, and since then I started and have been trying to finish a detailed testimonial documentary of my family's conversion into the Light of the World Church. I do share a good part of it in when I share my testimony. I forget which episode that is with Sister Beth, but there's more to it than that, and I want to share that in detail. I want to get that project done because my hope is to be able to watch that finished project with my father.
Yes.
Before he goes home.
Yes.
The other, I don't know, Sister, you said you were watching some of the podcasts, but the other is the paperbacks that we're doing. Each podcast we're turning into a paperback for those who prefer to learn of the testimonies by reading something in hard print, or for those that are without access to social media like we are. Primarily, I have met up with a lady in the city of LA who's putting together a group of people that are donating paperback books to prison inmates. So there's an open door there for me. I'm hoping to get these same testimonies into those inmates for them to learn and hear of how the Lord's, basically the door's open for all of us, And fourth reason, I haven't been able to record any songs. I've enjoyed recording some simple a cappella songs, and I want to get back to that also. My thought is that someday when I'm too old to do this, God permitting, I'll have something I can hit a playlist and just rejoice in the memories of all of these, and hopefully leave something for my children and grandchildren to remember me by. So for all those reasons, I will be publishing after this episode, which will be 32nd. 2 weeks after this one publishes, I'll start from there and go in every other week. So hopefully the listeners will stick around as they will continue to be beautiful as they have been since episode 1.
Amen.
Well, Sister, you have a story to tell. It's your story, and the blessings the Lord's allowed you, the hardships you've experienced, and let's get started. So I'm going to stop talking, and I'm going to give you the mic. And just start from the beginning, where it is that the Light of the World Church begins in your family. If you can maybe start from there. Some have started with what their life was like before they even knew of the Light of the World Church, So anywhere in that vicinity that you want to start from?
Yes. So
yours.
God pay you for the glory of God. So my family, my parents met here in LA, but before they came over here, so nobody in my dad's family is from church, just to mention that, to this day. My mom her mother already passed away. She slept in the arms of the Lord. My mom's sisters, I believe it was 2 or 3 sisters and a brother. They lived in Tepic, Nayarit, and my mom was over here working, and they had converted into the church. I don't know how, but they accepted, and so my mom found out. One of my aunts told me the story. So my mom found out, and my mom hadn't seen my grandma, her mom. So we decided I had a sister who at the time was about, I'm thinking 6 years old, and I was about around 8 months old. So my mom said, she decided to go see my grandmother in Tepic. And we were both born here, my sister and I. And at the time, my mom still didn't have papers. And this was, I believe, like in 1970, like 1980, close to 81. And my dad stayed here working. They used to work in hotels, cleaning hotels, and they lived there. They lived there as well. And so we go to Mexico, and my aunt was telling me that she was one of my aunts that she lives here. She also has another testimony. She's barely coming back to church. So my mom was packing, and she said that she started packing this big old, what they call it, un Cristo, like a big old piece of,
like a crucifix,
but huge. She said it was huge.
Okay.
And my aunt was laughing at her. She's like, "Why are you packing that?" She said, "I'm packing this. I don't care. I'm going to take it because when I get over there, that's my house." I guess my mom would send money over there and, to my family. And that's my house, and I'm going to put it right in the middle, right in the middle of the house. And they can't tell me anything. She was really upset that they had converted.
Okay.
My aunt was like, "Well, you're going to break it, why are you going to pack it so big?" So she packs it. We go to Mexico, and another aunt over there, because this aunt that was next to her while she was packing, she stayed here. But another aunt that was over there, I didn't mention this, but one of my cousins gave a testimony. My cousin Carla. Well, it was her mom that was in Mexico.
Oh, so Sister Carla?
She's my cousin.
Is your cousin? Awesome. Yes. Cool.
So her mom, she was little too at the time. Her mom was the one that told my aunt, "Oh yes, when she came over here, she put it right in the middle." And my grandmother told her, "Don't tell her anything. Just let her put it. Don't tell her anything," because my mom was upset, cursing, and so they told her, "Would you like to come to church with us?" "No, I'm not going to go with you," and just cursing and all these names. So a few days passed, and it was almost time for us to come back. My grandmother from my dad's mom, she was going to, because she had papers, she was going to cross my sister and I back, and my mom was going to cross through Coyote or something. And so a couple days, I don't know, 2-3 days before, my mom said, "What time are you leaving to church?" And she said, "Oh, we're leaving so and so, such and such time." "Okay, wait for me." Oh, sure. So she went to church, and I guess in that time, the minister spoke to her. I don't know what he must have spoken to her about, but I guess she got the number to the minister here in LA. At the time, it was Brother Carlos Montemayor, when it was still a carpa.
Wow, yeah.
And so
I remember that.
Yeah, but they were already starting to build the temple. And so that happened. So the night before, when we're about to come back, my grandmother was about to come and get us. The night before, my family decides to go have dinner. So we all went to have dinner somewhere around there. I don't know, tacos maybe, I don't know.
Yeah.
And on the way back, we got in a taxi. We got in a car, in a taxi, I believe. And it was a bunch of us. And a drunk driver hit us. And it was a major accident. My sister, she's the only one that passed away. She died almost instantly. I remember my mom told me that she had me in her arms, and she could just see my sister, and her blood was just gushing. And so when they took her to the hospital, she had already died, but they hadn't told my mom this. So my aunt that saw my mom pack her things before she went to Mexico, she was here, and when she said, "We were there, I was there when your dad got the news." And you should have seen him. He was punching holes in the wall and just punching and punching. And you know, his sister, my dad's sister, was, calm down, calm down. He was just punching the wall and punching the wall. And she's like, he was just making holes in the wall. And I told him, you know, what benefit do you get out of this, hurting yourself? You know, your wife needs you. You need to go over there. You need to get a ticket and a plane ticket and go over there now. And so he listened to my aunt. So my dad didn't know how to tell my mom that she had already died. I think they had already buried her. But so I don't know how that happened, where the whole situation, I never really asked my dad about it.
Yeah.
But they came back. So they come back. We're here in LA already. And my aunt was telling me that my mom was she was really sad. She said, I don't know. My aunt said that it took not even 3 days, it took like 2 days for her to say, I need to call the minister. I need to call them to come and pick me up. So this pain, it's so much that I don't think I can handle it. I don't think that I can take this pain. It's too heavy. I need God, because if I don't call the brothers, I'm going to either go into drugs or go into alcoholism or whatever it is. But I can't handle this pain on my own.
Yeah.
And so that's how my mom converted. God used my sister as a medium for her to convert. And the night before, another thing before the accident, the night before, I think they had already came back. Oh no, I'm sorry. Before we had gone to dinner, my sister was and I remember my mom told me that my sister was crying like uncontrollably. She was crying, and she kept saying, I want to see my dad. I want to see my dad. And yes, mija, you know, we're leaving tomorrow. We're going to go see your dad. No, I want to see my dad. I want to see my dad. And so she was crying and she was seeing things. And she was seeing, remember my mom said she saw like a family of skeletons on the couch or something. She was, could see things, and she was screaming. And they're looking at me, they're calling me or something like that. And so my grandmother from my mom's mom said, read the Psalm 91. And she said that she read that psalm and it said, calmó, you should calm down, my sister, calm down. But so that had happened the night before of the accident. Okay, so now when we're here, my mom converts. I think a few months later, my dad converted. But my dad, he never received the Holy Spirit. He was active in church. He actually, my dad he knows how to do a lot of things. My dad, he can do mechanics. He's a welder. He's a professional welder. Right now he's retired, but he also knows how to draw. I think he's lost his practice now, but back then when I was younger, he had the blessing they would call him over to the Servant of God's home. And every Christmas around that time, New Year's, they would decorate the Servant of God's home in East LA. And he had the blessing to draw something, whatever they, and so he also had the blessing to help when in the construction. I don't know if he drew anything but he was, you know, and he went to the labor as well. I think he got to go to the labor to Utah. So he was doing well, but I guess God knew his heart, you know, and so he started paying attention to the brothers that are pretty much not of of right heart before the Lord.
Mm-hmm.
So paying attention to the bad testimonies. And this, my dad told me not too long ago, a few months back, he said, you know what, the reason why I left church is because I started paying attention to the bad testimonies and listening and hanging around with those people. And now those people that, put that venom in him, you know, their testimonies are horrible. Like they ended up really, really badly. So now my dad is, I just always think that God knows the hearts, and for a reason. I tell him, you know, as long as there's a man on earth, an authority of God on earth, and you have life, you have the opportunity to repent. But I don't know what he feels like. He's a brother. He thinks he doesn't go to church. Anything he lives like a Gentile, but he also considers himself a brother. So, but you know, Satan, when we leave church, he turns our minds into, I mean, even when we talk, like I'm saying this because when I left, I'll tell you how I left church for a long time. Satan puts, and you know what, I was thinking this morning, and I wrote it down so I wouldn't forget. But I wrote, the world slowly begins to destroy the beauty that God has given each person. And this is when, especially for the children of God who leave the path of the Lord, Satan begins to destroy that beauty, not just physically, but that beauty internally, your thoughts. And so I see that for my dad, and I just, you know, I don't, there are a lot of things that happened that my brothers, I have two brothers. One is not doing well. He's doing really, really bad. The other one's not doing well either, but he's a little bit more, I don't have contact with one. I think he's in jail, for a long time. I don't know. The other brother, my other brother, is the one that I have. He would be the youngest one. He's 5 years younger than me. He's not too long ago, I had him here because he got really sick and I hadn't seen him in many years, and he looked really bad. And so I took him to get a haircut and all this stuff. And before then I had asked the Lord to allow me the opportunity to talk to my brother, to explain to him the will of God and why there's a man on earth. And so God allowed me that opportunity. He answered my prayer, and my brother got really sick. So I had him here for 2 weeks, and I was able, from Adam and Eve to all the way to now, and explaining in each time that there's always been a man of God and who God speaks to so that he can deliver the message. And he was understanding. And because so I'm getting ahead of myself here. So, so now, so my dad, so he helped out, but eventually my dad left church. At this time, I was about, I would say 12 years old. My dad was already starting to, maybe 11, maybe before then, not go to church. Actually, before then, maybe 10 years old. I don't know. He was not going to church anymore. And, but he always had that, he always supported my mom in a sense where, it's time to go to the Dominical or the prayers. Oh, listen to your mom, to her. But there's also, other, with couples, with their marriage, there was also times where one of my aunts told me, because my mom would tell her, you know, Efrain is my dad's name. He's telling me, you know, ponte pantalones, put on pants, and let's go dancing. But it's always been like a jokester, so we don't know. I mean, in his heart, you know, but he bugging my mom. So, but anyways, what I saw was my dad would always support my mom in that sense. Like go with her to church. If we behaved badly in church in the kids studies, children's studies, and my mom had to, they did this and this, my dad would, he would sometimes hit us, or he would,
just discipline. Correct. Yeah.
Yeah. And he always gave me for my ofrendas, and Dad, can I have there's a special ofrenda? Can I have money for that? Oh, yes, no question. He gave it to me. So now my dad's out of church. Of course, as I mentioned earlier, the enemy starts to takes you to a different mind. And at that time, I was about, I think, 13, close to 14. And I remember that I would hear my parents argue. And we used to be a really close family. We used to go out to dinner. We used to go to Disneyland a lot before, when it was not expensive, not that expensive. And so we did a lot as a family. We ate together.
That's when you were in church. All of you were in church.
Correct. Yes. Yeah. We would eat together. And yes, that's a good point, because I started noticing after my dad was not in church anymore, he was, we started not eating at the table anymore together.
Yeah.
But so my parents were arguing and I wouldn't understand. And I was taking my dad's side. And I would tell my mom, why are you arguing with him? And this and that. And, but she was already seeing as a wife, the things that were going on. And so it turns out that one day, I don't remember if I had already turned 14. I think I had already turned 14, but I was in the living room talking to one of my friends one day, and my mom was cooking something in the kitchen, and they were arguing. My dad had a pool table outside, and there was this brother, I think 2 brothers, and then 2 other brothers that I don't know if they're in church anymore. I think it was like 3 or 4 brothers outside playing pool table with my dad. My dad comes in probably to use the restroom or something, and he had to pass through my mom, so they're arguing. And my friend on the phone is like, what's going on? What's going on? And I said, nothing. I gotta go. And I hung up. And after that, the brothers came in. But it was as if my dad was possessed, because I remember that I saw his eyes were like red. So the brothers intervened, and they were, calm down, trying to calm him down. And my mom, I brought my mom outside to the door, and I remember that I don't know if she was saying something, or she wasn't saying it. She was just standing, like she was in shock as well. And my dad, he still had so much anger in him, and so we had to leave that night to my aunt's house, Carla's mom, my cousin. We went to her house, and I just remember it was really hard, because it was a big shock for my brothers, for us, and we didn't know what was going to happen.
Yeah.
So after that, brother, after that, my brothers and I think that's when we started distancing ourselves from the Lord.
Yeah.
Because we felt my dad left. Eventually they got a divorce because my dad was really upset, and the minister told my mom, you know what, give it to him. He's like, but they couldn't believe it, but and so he got what he wanted. He left, and my dad wasn't around. He would still come once a week to leave us money for groceries and stuff, but he left. He was gone. And so this is the time where my mom went through a lot. My mom went through a lot because not just that huge pain with my dad going through that. And then I remember I started doing my own thing. I was still in church. I was in choir. I remember our youth, the time of my youth was beautiful in church. And it just started becoming more where I was hanging around more actually I was isolating myself from people. And then I started associating myself with people that were not from church. So my brothers were already, they started doing their own thing. They started getting into drugs and all this stuff. And I remember that I never talked about what happened. And I just started, I don't even know. I think I tried to block the pain. I was just not thinking of things. And I was still in church, but I started just, when I turned 18, that's when I left church. Because I felt, oh, I'm 18, I'm over 18, I can do what I want.
Yeah.
So now by this time I get a job and I start hanging around with people, and slowly I started not to wear skirts anymore and going out. And then I started first I got into first I started drinking a little bit here and there, and then I started smoking weed until one day when I was, I think 22, I believe, I started getting into other drugs. And I remember that I saw two girls that we went out to a club, and before going in, I saw them, setting up their drugs, and I said, "Oh, can I try it?" And they ignored me. And again, "Oh, let me try it." And so they gave me some, and from there on, that
hooked you.
That hooked me. And
Yeah.
so
in my previous one of my most recent interviews with Sister Esley, she gives testimony how a close friend of hers, not of the church, in school one day was very insistent on her trying that drug just one time. That's all you have to just try one time.
I remember that.
And yeah, she refused. And we were talking about how just that one time enough will hook you and spiral you down in so many different harsh ways.
Yes.
But yeah.
It sure will.
So
I remember another episode also that I had where my dad was still living with us. I don't remember it was before or after, but I remember in the middle of the night, and I know it's God who woke me up, because I was in a deep sleep, and I remember I heard something like a click, and I wake up, and I instantly we had bunk beds, and I was on the top one. I don't remember, but I just jumped. It's like I just jumped. I don't know what was going on, but it was like automatic. And I know it was God, because it was just instant wake. I hear a click, open my eyes, jump. That really affected me a lot, because I remember I got really sick physically. I wanted to, I was just really weak. My whole body was, I was really pale. I got really sick, and it affected me so much. And emotionally, it affected me later on.
Yeah.
So that was an episode that I remember. I wrote a few points here. So when I So I fell really deep into the world. It started getting worse and worse and worse. And I had a boyfriend from out of church, and I got involved with this person who was, I believe he was 10 years older than me, 10, 12 years older than me. And now that I look back, right before I came to church, I was hating him because I was so young, he took advantage of my mind. And even though I wasn't forced, and I know that the drugs had a lot to do with it. I just feel like, it was really, really disgusting of that person to do something like that, and so, I started getting more and more into drugs, and I started drinking more, and it got to the point where after 10 years, brother, that I wasted my life with that person, I left him, and by this time my mom passed away. My mom passed away in 2010. The Lord took her. She went through a lot with my brothers, with me. She saw us. She suffered a lot because watching us leave church.
She persevered to the end, sister.
She persevered to the end. She was faithful. She was in the choir. She had a beautiful wake. A lot of brothers went in East LA.
What was her name?
Josefina Reyes.
Josefina
Reyes. And she was really faithful. She was always in the 9 a.m. prayers, and in the afternoon. Well, she was working when she was working, she was not going to the 9 a.m. prayers, but other than that, she was always in church.
Yeah.
My mom, I remember there was a time when you fall into these things of the world, you become irresponsible, especially when you get into drugs. You got to pay your car and you stop, or you miss 1 month and then it carries on, or whatever it is.
Yeah. And
I remember that I was driving with a suspended license because, from irresponsibility.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, I'll pay it next month. And I remember that I had let it go, and it had been about 5 years, I think. And I got that car. I got it when I was 19. My dad bought it for me. I remember one time there was a time where I wanted to fix my life, how I thought I knew or could. I was out of church, and I was like, I want to be responsible. I want to pay, I don't really have any debts because I don't know what they call it, debt anxiety, but if I owe something, I have to pay it off.
Yeah.
Or it's just, it's me. But so I wanted to pay that off, whatever I owed at the court. And I said, you know what? One of these days that I got courage, and I asked a friend, I told my friend the situation, and he was like, well, let's go. I'll help you pay for it. Yeah, I'll loan you the money. Okay. So I go to court, and I present myself in front of the judge. From the moment that he called my name, he's looking at me really ugly, up and down. And he hears me out, and he says, so you haven't paid this for 5 years, and but now you want to come and pay your dues. So I don't think so. He said, you're going to jail 180 days. Bam.
Oh, no.
And I was like, whoa, like in my mind, I was like, I was scared, but I was shocked, I really didn't expect it.
Yeah.
But I wasn't, I had to just stay strong. So luckily I even drove that day to the courthouse. I remember I turned around, I gave the key to my friend, and imagine the pain of my mom knowing, because he took the car to my mom's house and her finding out that I was in jail. And so they only kept me for a week, but I mean, even one day, it's horrible.
Yeah.
It's really bad. And when I got home, my mom, she was just really, really, really sad. And she was like, I was so worried about you. I can't believe, you. And she would try to, bring me, encourage me to go back to church. But I felt lost. I don't know. I think it was having to deal with the pain from before. I don't know. I don't want to go back to church. And so I just started getting deeper and deeper into the world. When my mom passed away, that's when things got really bad, because they had left us the house, but my brothers and we were all not doing well. One of my brothers wanted to fight us, and I left. I leave, and pretty much I'm homeless now. So I asked one of my friends from the world to if I can stay at her house, because I had nowhere to go. And she said, yeah. And she lived with her whole family. And as a person, I remember, I mean, I am grateful for the time that she had me there, because she did have me quite a couple years there. And her family accepted me. At first they were not, but she lived with her boyfriend. It was a whole full house there, and her nieces and her mom, dad. And I slowly won them over, the parents. And I never did them wrong. I try to be helpful, but that was my life right there, brother. And that's when I started really like wake up, and the drugs were my life.
Yeah.
I would drink. I started drinking because I wanted to take the pain away. I felt from the moment I would wake up, I would open my eyes, I had pain in me. I wanted to go home, and I wanted to go home, and I didn't have a home. I wanted to go home to my family. I didn't have my mom anymore. I wanted to go back to church at times, but I was embarrassed. And I would think, I'm too involved in the world now. How am I going to go back to church? I'm too deep into this. I can't live without the drugs. I can't live without alcohol. How am I going to do it? How am I going to go to church? I cannot go to church high. I cannot go to church drunk. And so I ignored that. I ignored that feeling. I shut off that feeling, because I taught myself how to block feelings. And I just
For how long, sister?
That was from 1998, when I was 18, all the way through to 2016, I would say. So it was right about 20 years almost. But in a period of time where it just got really bad, it was after 2010, all the way through. No, but it was really bad before then too. It's just this whole period of time after 1998, all the way to 2016. 2017 is when I came back to church. But that last year, you'll hear how God started working with me. And that's I was working, but then I lost my job because mentally I just wasn't right.
Yeah.
So I wrote a few points so I wouldn't forget. When I was in the world, brother, I remember visiting another church, not because I wanted to feel that love again that I would feel from God, but it was because I told one of my friends, I'll go to your church, you go to my church. And I think this was when I was like 18. I was still visiting the church, going to our church, here and there. And I remember I went to a Catholic church, and I remember that it was more out of curiosity. And I remember that when I was there, I remember thinking, God, I will never step up into here again. Please forgive me. Please forgive me, because I was so fearful that I knew God, that's one thing he detests the most, and so the idols and all that. And so I remember I felt so guilty. I remember I felt so guilty. And I remember this little part because I remember my cousin gave a testimony how she went into a church as well. She was looking for something to feel if she was comfortable. I knew that I was not in the right place. I remember, and this was wrong, but I remember I knelt down and I said, God, I know this is not your church, but if you can hear me, please, I'm sorry for coming in here. And, I felt really bad. But after that, that was the only time I ever did step into another church. I think I did go to another church just to see. It was a African American church, but it was just out of curiosity. And and so when okay, so I don't know, do I move on to the moment where God starts working in me?
Yeah, but before we do that, sister, let's stay here for a minute, because you mentioned so many different scenarios. I mean, I've mentioned how this project is for the listeners not of our faith can hear firsthand testimonies from us to see how God has worked in our lives. And we mentioned at the beginning to reflect and look back on where we were at one point in our life, how low we can fall, and how the Lord saves us from there. But not only for the listeners, because I know there are some youth that also listen to this, and it's not just for the youth; it's for any of us at any age. Any of us are susceptible to falling victims to either our own temptations and weaknesses because we're not strengthening our faith, nourishing our faith on a daily basis, or because the way the enemy works to tempt us all on a daily basis. So on that note, what would you advise any youth that might find themselves in any of those early scenarios that you mentioned, where you started noticing maybe a distancing of a parent, where there's, I imagine I think you mentioned something about there was a time there in the beginning where you maybe felt confused, the pain, not understanding the situation. What advice could you give any youth now of our community that might find themselves in a similar situation, to avoid going down the path to avoid making the decisions you made, that led you to all of that?
So first and foremost, it's really, really important for the youth to pay attention in the prayers and understand the doctrine, understand the love of God, understand that and of course to the parents, to speak to them, to really put their effort into learning about how God works. Because in moments like that, I would advise, if you're going through something where you're feeling this pain, a lot of pain, and the first thing that the enemy is going to try to do is drive you away from the Lord, from the thoughts of, you know what, I'm going to go to my God. For someone that has that understanding of the youth, young people who have that understanding that what God is, and that we can go to him at every moment, at any moment and every moment, they will run to God. But for those that, I think if we don't understand that God is the only one who can help us, we're going to run away. And that's what happened to me. I think that if someone's going through something, some pain, that, and they're thinking of staying away from church, don't do it. I advise you to go to the temple and pray to God. Pray to God, but be patient, and keep praying every day. As a matter of fact, several times a day. Yeah. Kneel down in your home, kneel down and start praying. Go to your room, anywhere. If it's for the girls, put your chalina on, your veil, kneel down and talk to God. Talk to him as if he was right in front of you. And I know that this last letter that the servant of God sent, where he answers us in a way that's convenient for us, maybe not at the moment, but in the moment that you most need it, he's going to give us strength. So I would advise to pray to God, kneel down wherever you are, or wherever if get to the temple as soon as you can. Now, if you're having doubts, or speak to somebody, don't stay quiet, don't keep quiet. Ask someone that you're comfortable with. If you're not comfortable with your parents, maybe there's a sister that you feel comfortable speaking to, or a brother, or a minister. I mean, I advise the minister, but maybe if you're embarrassed to ask, or you have to speak, because how can we know how you're feeling if you don't say it, if you don't speak, and that's what I would advise.
How about for okay, now again, this can be anybody regardless of our age, from the church, where when we've distanced ourselves and we've fallen into similar situations, some as dark and painful as yours, some not that far away, not that far down, but where we've done things and we have those thoughts, or we allow those thoughts to block us, like where you said you felt you weren't worthy, you felt you couldn't go back because of things you were doing, the things you had gotten into. Maybe there were thoughts of the Lord can't possibly forgive me for the things I've done. What could we say now to any that might be listening that are in that situation, where they're thinking, I can't go back. Okay. And they suppress the feeling, like you said, you block those feelings.
Okay. So I will answer that with telling you a situation that I went through. So as I mentioned how Satan, he destroys your mind more and more. So there was a point where I was really, 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 and really fell into darkness. And I remember that Satan started putting in my head, salvation is not for you. Like I could almost hear those words. Salvation is not for you. you were born for me, to serve me. And so it got to the point every day that thought was in my mind. And I remember that it got so bad that I actually thought, and I would say, okay, Satan, I serve you now. I would literally say that. I said, yeah. And I would remember, I would think, and I would cry, because I would cry for like a few minutes, but I would stop myself, because I said, you have to be strong, because you were born to serve Satan, and you were not born to serve God. It was just not you. You were not one of the ones chosen. And I remember thinking, but I wanted to serve you, but it's not for me. Now, this is where you want me. I would even say that to God. This is where you want me. It wasn't for me. And so now I would say, okay, I serve you. And so I would drink more and do whatever. And the people that I was affiliated with, brother, there are people who have power in the streets. And I remember that I would many times, I was in a lot of danger. Many times where I started from a very young age. I started hanging out with people from gangs and stuff and all that. And so when at this point in my life, I'm thinking, this is where I serve you. But one day, brother, so I'm trying to see if I answer the question or after. You have to humble yourself to the Lord. If those thoughts are in your mind where you think that you're not for God, that is a lie. It's a lie from Satan. You may think, no, but I'm thinking it. It's my thoughts. Yeah. But because if God gave you life and there's a man on earth, it's because you're predestined, you're called for salvation. If the doctrine comes to your ears, if you hear of the Light of the World Church, the calling is for you too. It's not, you have to humble yourself to the Lord and cry to him, ask him to help you, and he will. I remember that one day I was on my phone. I was scrolling through, and I'm thinking, well, one day maybe I'll go back to church. And I remember I saw, I wanted to know about the church. I wanted, I was really deep into the life I was living. I had moved into with my last boyfriend, whom I also will give testimony now of in a bit of how I preached to him as well. I remember that night I was scrolling through my phone because I already had thoughts like, well, I wonder how the brothers are. I want to know. And I think this is God already working in me.
So this is now like your turning point.
Yes.
Perhaps.
I think so. Yes.
Yeah.
Which
is beginning in the way you're thinking.
Yes. Because this is the time where I was already thinking I'm serving Satan. I'm serving him. I belong to him. And I was just waiting for my time. I never wanted to commit suicide, but I didn't care anymore. And I remember thinking, I'm going to drink so much that I don't care if I don't wake up.
With no regard.
I just don't care anymore. I'm going to hell anyways, I would think. So whether it's now or later, it doesn't matter. I was thinking that way. And so so those thoughts were already happening to the fullest.
You had accepted that.
I
was your destiny.
Yeah, pretty much. And I gave in fully to the 100%. And I said, okay, well, and I was just living the day by day. My days would seem eternal. I was like, well, why can't I just die already? You know, I would think. So one day I'm scrolling through the phone and I said, I wonder how the brothers are. You know, maybe there's technology has advanced, and maybe there's I just wanted to know. There's some on the internet about the church, and so I'm scrolling through. I went on YouTube and I'm scrolling, and this is where I'm thinking the servant of God, Apostle Samuel, was still alive, and this is where I see images of all the brothers, and where it seems it says servant of God has slept in the arms of the Lord.
Oh, wow.
This is where my whole, I was already, even though in my mind I was to 100% dedicated to supposedly to Satan. This is where if there was one little tiny hope, it was gone. It was gone because there was no man on earth anymore.
Yeah.
And it was a night. It was during the night. I remember that I looked out the window and I was like, did God come already for his people? I was like, I don't see any destruction. Is it going to happen any moment? Well, the way your mind thinks. And I was really scared. And I was like, what's going to happen to me? That's it. That's it. That's it. This is really it. And I was really sad. And my boyfriend at the time, he's like, what's wrong? And nothing. And I left it like that. A couple days, I believe. I said, I want to know what else happened. Something was telling me to continue looking, you know, and it's as if something was telling me that there's something more I need to know or find out.
Yeah.
And
Don't stop. Yeah.
So because I had stopped looking at my phone because it was so hurtful that I didn't want to face the reality.
Yeah.
And so I remember that I got my phone and I searched LLDM, La Luz del Mundo, and then I'm scrolling again, and this is where I see Apostle Naasón Joaquin Garcia.
Praise God.
And my heart dropped, brother. My heart dropped because this is where I said all those thoughts where I belong to you, Satan, were like, no, I have a chance now. You know, I have an opportunity.
Praise God.
And I was so happy. I remember I think it was at that moment where I even prayed to give thanks to God in my way, you know, in my way out of church. But I remember that was the moment where my mind started changing. Mm-hmm. And now I'm like, how am I going to do it to come back to church? I said, but I can't go. I'm really embarrassed, you know? And so I was really sad because I knew I couldn't do it. I couldn't go back. Yeah. It was really sad because I really wanted to. So what happened was one day when you're on drugs and stuff, there's days where you wake up really depressed, really, really, really bad until you get that in you again too. Mm. So it was one of those moments where I was just like really, really, really feeling so anguished, I guess. And I remember I felt a huge necessity to pray to God because I couldn't take that anymore, the pain. I couldn't take it anymore. And I remember my boyfriend was in the other room, and I knelt down, and he walked in, and he saw me. What are you doing? I said, I'm praying. Give me a moment. And I was kneeling down, and I was praying. And I remember telling God, God, please help me. Please help me break the ties that I have with the world. I don't care. I don't care. Break me off from this relationship that I have with this person. I don't care. Please help me. And I promise that I'll come back to your church. And so a couple of days went by, and this song started coming in my head. How Great Thou Art. Hmm. And I looked it up on YouTube, and I said, oh Lord my God, when I in awesome wonder. And it was so beautiful, like the words, the melody, everything. And I remember that song kept going stronger and stronger in my head. And I was like, I would look it up on YouTube, and I remember I liked the video of this one artist when she sings really beautiful. Mm-hmm. And it was so beautiful, and I would play it over and over, and I would start in the shower. I would be, oh Lord my God, when I an awesome one, and I would just be singing and singing, and they were looking at me like, what's wrong with her? And so,
any Carrie Underwood in there?
That was her. That was her.
Yeah, I'm a little bit of a country fan, so
yeah, so beautifully. But then, brother, I'm looking for other videos of that song, and I run into this video from the brothers. I don't know if I should play it for you right now, or
sure.
So this is brother David Mendoza, Jr., because I remember in choir when I was young. He was really young, and his sister used to direct the choir. But this brother,
I don't know if I'll include this later, but I disciplined him one time years ago, but
oh my God,
that might be a testimony for another time.
But I don't know if you can see, brother. This is
okay. So he's directing the choir there.
Yes.
Yes.
So this particular video, brother, mm-hmm. When I heard it, I saw it. The moment I played it, I was taken to another level. It was like angels singing. It didn't compare with any of the artists in the world, because it was our brothers' voices. And I remember being so happy, and it was like I wanted to almost put the phone in my heart, like melt it in my heart. It was just so beautiful to my ears. And this is where I was like, this is my family. This is my family singing. And that I would play it over and over, over and over. And it was so beautiful. And this is where I would say talking crazy, because my language started changing. Now, I was separating myself from that person. Mm-hmm. Like I was in, as emotion. I was out. Actually, I was preparing myself. I remember another way that I was trying to leave was supposedly doing a self-hypnosis on myself, mm-hmm. Where I would get these apps and meditate, and to give me strength and all this stuff. But it was really God working in me. And so I would feel a lot better, and I would hear the song, the hymn, and I would like just feel so. I felt like I started feeling this strength in me, and then I remember that I started saying, you know what, you think I would tell this person, you think you have the power, but the one who has the power, it's God. It's not you. You're that day that you have to face him. Yeah. You're nothing. And I was starting to talk crazy. I would be saying, you know what? There's a God. There's a God. There's an apostle of Christ. And I remember saying one day, I was like, I started crying. I was, you know, I was high and all this stuff. And then, but I was feeling guilty inside because I was high. I was already feeling guilty.
Yeah.
I was like, just in pain because I wanted to get out of it, but I didn't know how. And so this person, I said, he's like, what's wrong? Why are you crying like this? I'm like, you don't understand. There's a man of God on earth. You don't understand. There's an apostle. His name is Naason, Joaquin Garcia. And you know, there was an apostle before him, but God, you know, God took him and now he has called on another apostle and there's opportunity for salvation. He's all, and I said, and he's looking at me like crazy. And I'm like, you have to believe me. Like I said, all this time that you've known me, I've never lied to you. You have to believe me. He's like, I know you've never lied to me. And I said, I've always been honest with you with everything. And you know that what I'm saying, you should know it's not a lie. It's real. And and I said, why don't you come with me? I said, come with me. And we can both, let's get out of this life, you know. And he was involved in, he's pretty in the world power, you know. Yeah. And so his life is just, you know, and I'm not going to mention those. But yeah, he said, you know what, maybe one day, but not right now. And I was like, okay. And I remember that night I thought to myself, I'm going to leave this person, but I'm not going to tell him. I'm going to start mentally preparing myself. I'm going to pretend that I'm already not with this person. And I'm going to prepare myself so that when I leave, it doesn't hurt me.
Yeah.
And I was preparing myself. I would a little bit of things. And I went back to that friend that she opened her doors to me and said, can I stay with you again? And but before then something happened where they raided the home where I was at with this person, and they had to leave. So that was now that I look back, it was God doing all these things so that I would leave that place. Yeah. But I went back to this girl's house and I was there and living the reckless life again still. And so one day I said, I'm going to call one of my brothers. No, actually, yeah, I did, but I didn't have contact with him. But out of nowhere, I had I don't know if I ran into him. Somehow I had contact with him. And I said, I kept his number. I said, hey, can you pick me up and take me to my dad's house? Because I remember that there was a church. My dad lived in San Bernardino, and I remember that he had mentioned that there was a church there close to his home. And I said, okay, so I'm going to go to my dad, and I think I'll go to church there. And so time went on, and I was kind of, I had called my brother and I left him hanging, and I had called him again and I had left him hanging at another time because I had changed my mind, you know, still involved in that life. And so one day things happened. Something really, really happened where this one person, she was really out there. And so she was, I was like, this girl's going to kill me, you know, because she was just not all there. She was really possessed. And that's when I started saying, you know what, I got to get out of here. I have not the person that I was living with, somebody that came to that home, to the house out of nowhere. She just came. And so I said, you know what, I have to get out of here. And things started happening, brother, in that home where I said, you know what, this is it. I called my brother and he said, are you sure, Mari, this time? Are you sure? And I said, I have my bags ready. I got whatever. I had a little bit of things because in the world, brother, I lost my home. I lost my car. and they ended up towing my car because it was there. I was depressed. I began isolating myself from the world for many years. That I'll tell you a little bit how after I came to church, how difficult it was for me to even speak again. Mm-hmm. So my brother came to pick me up. I was waiting out there with a couple of bags. I stormed out of there. I go to my dad's house. God permits me to go. My other brother's living there. And I didn't know that he was also doing bad. Mm-hmm. And so by this time, brother, my little brother, my younger brother and I, the one that took me, and then my other brother, we're living there with my dad. He's living by himself by this time. And my younger brother and I started again, drinking and doing whatever. And so remember that when I prayed to God, that time I knelt down and I said, I promise I'll come back. If you bring me to my dad's house or if you get me out of here, I promise to come back to church.
Yes.
When I said, if you get me to I forgot to mention, I asked him if he gets me to my dad's house because I had heard of the
close by
church
temple. Yeah.
So when I'm there at my dad's, this was around Christmas time. I was ignoring. I'll go next week or this and that. So like 2 months went by, and I think by this time God is like, well, you know what? I brought you here, and you promised me, and you're not going to play with me, or I imagine, So something really bad happened with my older brother, the one that's now in jail. He was again possessed or something, and it was a certain situation where he was hallucinating and he thought I had set him up or something. The thing is that he wanted to come and beat me up, and he was banging on the door. I was asleep. It was at night, and I got up. My dad got up, and he said, no, she was going to get me killed. And all this whole situation where he was imagining things. And I think the situation was so intense that I started getting, I started feeling really dizzy, and all of a sudden I just hear voices, but I was black. I could see pitch black, nothing. Mm-hmm. I don't know if something with my body, my sugars or whatever. I don't know anything. Mm-hmm. I had to sit down, and my ears, I couldn't hear, and it started hurting, and I all of a sudden I couldn't hear anything. And then I for a little bit, and then I came back, and I was like, I'm not feeling well. I almost thought I had to go to the emergency, and I told my dad, guys, I'm not feeling well. I'm really not feeling well. And I think my dad noticed it, and he somehow God calmed the situation down. And I said, Dad, take me to church. That moment when Dad, take me to church. But right now it's almost 9 o'clock. There's nobody there. I said, I don't care, Dad. Take me to church, please. Take me to church. So he drives me. Okay, mija, let's go. So he drives me to church. Where is it? Well, I know it's somewhere here. And there's 2 temples. My dad used to live almost at the same distance from each, like the same equal distance. And so I went, and it was in East LA, the church, the Casa Pastoral, it's right next to the temple. So I grew up thinking, all the temples are like that. So I was looking for the Casa Pastoral, and I couldn't find it. And so, God, I wonder which of these houses might it be. And I didn't want to knock on the door. So my dad said, there's another temple somewhere down there. Okay, let's go. And so we went, and we saw these 2 brothers. It was already no brothers, but there was 2 brothers standing there. And I get off the car, and I say, ¿Ustedes son de la luz del mundo? Sí. ¿Puedo hablar con el ministro? And they look at me like, no está. He's not here. Mm-hmm. Like, can I speak to the minister? No, he's not here. But I was like, oh. And I was waiting for them to say like, oh, but you know what? I can get you his number or something. But no, they didn't. They just stayed quiet. And I looked really bad, brother. I had hot pink hair, and I was in pants and who knows how I looked, right? Physically, like face and everything. And so they probably were like, she's probably one of those people on the streets or something. So they didn't help me out. They and I was like, well, I was like expecting, I think I was expecting for them to say, well, you know what, we'll help you contact him. Anyways, it didn't happen. I left. So all night I couldn't sleep. And I said, in the morning, Dad, take me before you go to work, drop me off at the temple. Okay, I'll drop you off. So he drops me off. And I think we got there and I think the 5 was over. Or I didn't find the brothers. And it was I think 5:30 or 6. And I didn't know how to enter the temple. I guess it was in the back. So my dad goes to work. I said, I'm going back to the other temple. So I go back to the other temple. And I'm like, there's no number here. There's nothing. So
how did you get over there?
I walked.
From baseline to the other? Oh my God.
I walked and I walked back and I didn't find it again. So something said, go back again to the one on East Street, or I think it's East Street.
East Street.
So I go back for the second time. I walk again. I guess I was so nervous just desperate that I missed there was a big sign with the phone number there and I missed it. So the second time that I went back, there's a big number right there. And I'm like, there's a number here. So I called the number and the brother answered and I said, sí, me llamo Marisol Reyes y I've been in Spanish. I need to speak to the minister. I've been out of church for about 20 years and I want to come back to church and I need to speak to the minister. Is this the Light of the World Church? See, yes, this is the Light of the World Church. Yes, this is the minister. My name's Jose Valle. And I said, oh my gosh, I went like this. I took a big sigh. You don't know what I went through to find the number. And he kind of like laughed. And then I said, I need to speak to you. I really need to speak to you. And he's like, yes, of course. By this time it was about 8 o'clock. He said, yes, of course. He's all, why don't you come to the 9 a.m. prayer? And he directed me to which temple, the one on Highland. And so now I hang up. Okay, yes, I'll be there. Now I'm like, I don't have any skirts. And so what am I going to do? What am I going to do? And I'm walking fast to my dad's house. I have no money. What am I going to do? I don't have money or time to go buy a skirt. What am I going to do? I didn't want to go in pants. So I remembered I had these pants. It was like a jumper with the pants were like loose. I know what I'm going to do. I'm going to cut them up and I'll sew them. So I ran to my dad's house and I get those and I said, oh, it's going to take me forever to sew this. It was like from my stomach all the way down. That's a long way to sew both sides. Yeah. And I remembered I had a box of safety pins. So I said, okay, I'm going to safety pin it. So I get a bunch of safety pins all the way down, front and back. And I wore my jeans under and then I threw that on. And then by this time it was like 15 minutes to 9 o'clock. And I'm like, I'm not going to make it. It's because I had to walk. So I'm running, I'm jogging, running, I'm walking, jogging. So I get there at exactly like 9:01, 9:02. And brother, when I first entered the temple, I remember I would walk in and I laid my head on the wall. And I felt safe. I felt, I'm like, I'm here. And then the sister, wife, I made it. And then the wife of the minister turned around and she says, are you Marisol? I didn't kneel down or so. I don't know. I guess I was really nervous. And yes, Marisol, okay, the brother's waiting for you. So I went in to talk to the brother, and I told him, you know what, brother, I been out of church. You know, I got involved really heavily into drugs, into alcohol, and I've lost everything. My mom already slept in the arms of the Lord. My dad's not from church. He was, but he's not in church. And at the end, I told him, also, I need to tell you that I have 3 tattoos, because I didn't want to, like, if they were exposed there later on, and I just wanted to come up front with everything. And you know, but I was really embarrassed, you know, and the brother just looks, he just says, you know, after everything, he starts telling me, after everything is gone from you, todo se te haya salido, everything has, then you're free, he says. He didn't give me a time frame or anything. He just said that. So I was thinking, and I said, okay, God pay you. So by this time, brother, before I went to meet with the brother, I had asked my dad, Dad, can I have $2? Because I was so nervous that I said, I'm going to buy me a beer, because if when I come back, I'm going to be so nervous and I need to calm down. This was my mentality, thinking that when I come out speaking from with the minister, I'm going to drink my beer so that I can, you know, relax and not be so nervous.
Yeah.
But when I left the temple, everything was gone, brother. Like I remember worrying, like, oh, but I'm gonna get withdrawals, and I remember thinking all this stuff and from all this and that, brother. When I finished talking, from the moment I went in and came out in a few minutes, everything was gone. I didn't go through any withdrawals. I didn't. I got home, I threw it away. I was so disgusted by it. I at one point I was smoking cigarettes too, and I was so disgusted. And the miracle here that God did for me was that He healed me. He healed me. I didn't have to go to rehab. I didn't have to do any of that stuff. It was gone. It was gone. And I felt like I'm gonna wake up the next day feeling horrible. No, I felt so much strength. And in that time, I went to the 5, the 9, and the evening prayer. All 3 prayers I was going for like the first 2 months. And the very first, when I went to talk to the brother, he called his sister, and Sister Delia Avila and her family. She was the first sister that helped me. She gave me Chalina. She took me to her home. And she told me, you know, later on, she told me, I was really scared of you, but, you know, the sister told me to take care of you. And I was really scared of you. You looked the way you looked, and she's like, but I trusted in God, and God has given testimony of you now. Because in the end, she would rent me a room before I got married and came over here to San Diego. She introduced me to Sister Sandy. So those 2 sisters, Sister Sandy Mesa and Sister Delia and her family, and they were, and my friend Adriana too, that let me stay in her home a couple weeks. But these 2 main sisters, they helped me so much. Had no clothes, and within that week, sisters brought me bags of like dresses, skirts, and then from there, one of the Sister Sandy, she would loan me her car, and I would tell her, sister, God pay you, you know, I can't believe, you know, you're loaning me your car to go to work, because I got a job and I registered in school. I went back to school. And she said, no, sister, she's like, you know what? It's not me. God puts people in your path that He knows what you need. And it's all God. And I was understanding, and she would guide me. She's like, I would go all the way to the front. I would go all the way in the front. I would go to all the peticiones. I was just full on. And And the day that, about 8 months later, I wake up. I had, by then I had, within a month, brother, I applied at the Arco gas station across the street from the Temple on Highland, and they hired me. So I was working there. And then I was going to San Bernardino Valley College. I didn't know what I just wanted to go back to school. And I got another job. And so I was working. And then one day I wake up and I start feeling this part of my face really numb. And so I get to work. By this time I was working at the gas station, but I also got a job at this warehouse. And when I get there, the ladies were like, what's wrong with your face? And I said, I don't know, but I didn't think anything. So I go to the restroom, and I had Bell palsy. So it was really bad. So they sent me home. And then a week passed, and the minister said, why haven't you asked for prayer? And I said, well, because you haven't given me my liberty. But I don't know if that's what they call it, liberty or restoration. And he said, when did you come? And I said, January 2017. Well, it was that same year. January, he's like, okay, he said, 1 more week. But remind me. And I said, okay, but remind me. Okay. And so the week comes, I think it was a week or 1 month. It was one something. It was either the week or the month. The thing is that it was completed on a Sunday. And so I said, I went to him, brother, today's the day. You told me to come to. And he looked at me and he smiles and he said, you're free. And I was like, I was so happy. I was like, I was so happy I didn't go pray. So I tell the sisters, that day I was in the venta, and I tell the sisters, the brother gave me my liberty. The brother gave me so they're like, yeah, congratulations, and this and that. And so one of the sisters said, ¿Ya te apuntaste para cantar? Did you sign up to sing? And I said, there's no more room, because I looked at the list. And she's like, don't worry, take my place. And I said, really? And that's when I went to go consecrate. I went into the kids' room and I knelt down. I started my little consecration, and I was thanking God. And so the service came, and I get up, and I remember that the brother who was taking the service, he called somebody over, and I'm pretty sure he was making sure if hey, she can get up and sing. So I remember I saw that the little guy came back with this message. Okay. And so he said, now va a pasar nuestra hermana Marisol Reyes, because back then I was Reyes. And I get up. Everybody was shocked, and I get up, and brother, I take a step, and I start crying. I start crying, like I cover my face, but by this time my face was really like, all this was like this, but I didn't care. I didn't care. And I said, I got up, and I could barely talk too. And I said, que la paz, and just bawling. I couldn't talk. I couldn't speak. And again, I said, que la paz. And then I go back again, like this, like 3 times, brother. I couldn't control myself. And then, que la paz y la gracia del Señor Jesucristo sea con todos ustedes. Yeah, and I started just talking, and mi alma viene contenta, agradecida. And I just, and I kind of gave a little bit of a testimony. And then I remember that I started singing, brother. I got up to sing the hymn, ¿Cómo podré pagarte? So I start singing.
How could I repay you, my Lord and King?
Yes. And so I start singing the first verse. In the first stanza, I said, ¿Cómo podré pagarte mi Señor y Rey? And when it starts saying, las bendiciones que me has... When I start singing that second verse, I guess it was the second verse, the blessings, I didn't see anything. God permitted me a vision. I didn't see anything. It was dark.
Oh, wow.
And then I see a bunch of stars, like in a form of a tornado around me, surrounding me. And they squeezed like a rope, so around me, filled with stars, bunch of stars, and it hugged me and it lifted me up.
Oh, wow.
Like off the floor. I felt like I was off the floor. And then las bendiciones que me has dado en la vida. And then he slowly brought me back down. Wow. And then I just kept singing. Que del pecado y de la muerte.
Praise God.
I was just like singing my heart out. And when I left, and I'm going to mention this, sister, because I just saw recently the podcast you did on with Brother Joel Figueroa, where he mentions Mana Meli Mesa and Mana Maria Trejo. So they were there, and they remember my mom. Well, now Sister Maria Trejo. And I remember that Sister Maria Trejo told me, "Ay, cómo nos hiciste llorar," you know, after the service. Like, God, and everybody was hugging me. I felt
it's beautiful.
Happy. So happy, brother. It was everything was now possible. Everything was now possible. And that happens. My first Santa Cena, I don't know, do you want me to keep
everything you want to share, sister?
Okay, brother. I'm sorry. It's okay. So my first Santa Cena, I get to go to the first Santa Cena, but remember, this was around October where they gave me my liberty, but Santa Cena was in August. So before they permitted me. Okay. So Santa Cena, the Holy Supper 2017, which happens to be the last Holy Supper for the U.S. So when I get there, I went with Sister Delia and her family, and I walk to the beautiful province. I step foot in there, and everything was so beautiful, and I felt so light. I felt I was back home. I felt safe. I felt super happy, and I remember everything was just beautiful. Every single thing, all the brothers, all the sisters. God also permitted me a vision when before this, my first Sunday school, when I came back to church, my first Sunday school, when I walked in, the choir was singing this hymn that mentions Alcancé Salvación. I have reached salvation. And I was like, wow, this is directly to me, you know. I felt, and I remember there was a transmission, and the servant of God was speaking, and when he stopped, when he gave the pass, you know, and he was going to walk off, and the ministers followed him, I saw a really quick vision where the servant of God was dressed in clothing as if it were from like another time, like in the time of the apostles, and the same as the ministers as well. And then I would see all the brothers around me, and my brothers and sisters, all of different characters, but they were all my brothers. And as if we were in the time of the people of Israel. It was a quick vision. It was like, it was just really beautiful. So I get to the Santa Cena, and that day of the Holy Supper, I go in, there's a red carpet, and me, you know, so many years out of church, I didn't think, oh, well, I'm going to sit here. Maybe the servant of God will pass through here. So I took like the third seat down. So next thing you know, Holy Supper starts, and then the servant of God, all the brothers were like, the servant of God. So I'm like, the servant of God. And I'm like 2 sisters away from him. So I'm like looking at him, all the hands are, and I'm like looking and looking, and I'm like, where is he? Where is he? You know, the brothers were getting closer.
Yeah.
And next thing you know, boom, he's right in front of me, you know, like, and I was like, oh my God, there he is. And he just passed, and I wanted to like follow him, and it was so beautiful. And that Holy Supper. So then later on that evening, God permitted me another vision where when I take the bread, I bite onto the bread, and I close my eyes, and I'm praising the Lord, and I see, like in flashes, I see a man holding a body filled with slashes, a bunch of slashes all over his body, like the body of Christ, and his whole face was covered in. He had the crown of thorns, and he had the blood. I couldn't see his face because it was filled with blood. It was dripping on the floor, and the man, I couldn't see the man that was holding the body. I couldn't see his face. I could just see from here down, and he was holding him like this, and I see the body like this, and dripping blood and cuts, billions, I mean, of tiny cuts all over his body from head to toe. And that was me, brother. That was all the pain that I caused my Lord when I was out in the world. That was everything that I felt that I abandoned the Son of God somewhat when he, in his time. I felt that I abandoned my mom. I've abandoned all my family in the hardest times of my mom's life. I abandoned her. And the most beautiful thing, brother, for someone that I admire the brothers that never left the church, but for someone that God allows, that someone that leaves the church and God allows them to come back, it is such a huge blessing, brother, because not everybody receives this blessing. Yeah. Not everybody. I've known people who lost their lives when they left. Yeah. And so it's a huge, huge opportunity and a huge blessing. And I comprehended that, and it was just beautiful. From then on, God has given me so many blessings. That same year, I believe, there was a reunión de solos, and I didn't want to go. I said, no, I'm too cool for this. I'm not gonna go. Come on. So the sister convinced me, come on, let's go. Let's see how it's gonna be. Let's just go. It was in Coachella. Because the minister said, all the solos, I want you to stay after prayer. Okay, so there I am. And I guess I'm considered solo now. And so
I hear your companions at that time was Sister, let's see, was Sandy Mesa one of them?
Yes.
Was Bercy Castillo another?
Yes, Bercy.
And how about Bethany Madrid?
Yeah, Bethany, I met her too. Yes, I met her the first time I met her. Oh, Bethany.
She's my sister-in-law.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
Wow.
Sister Bercy's also helped me with a lot of these projects too.
Yeah, Bercy, she's my friend from East LA. I still have contact with her. She also helped me a lot. She gave me some clothes too, I remember.
Oh, that's beautiful.
Yeah, she's a good, really, really good sister.
So there goes all the single ladies to Coachella.
Yes. Oh my gosh, yes. So here we are. We go over there, and Sister Angie, we went with Sister Angie's. Bercy, I think she went with Bethany, and I went with Sister Sandy and Sister Angie. And so here we go. We go
on a mission.
Yes, we're on a mission, brother. And I was just over there to probably make fun of people. No, I'm just kidding. No, I really am. I was like almost embarrassed to go. And then I said, no, you know what? I'm going to have fun. It's cool. I'm going to have fun. At first, I'm like, I'm too cool for this. But then I'm like, you know what? I'm going to hang out with my brothers. I have a family now. And I was just so happy. So we get there, and yes. I met my husband there. I didn't think, but I remember he was staring at me when we did the speed dating. Mm-hmm. And I remember he was staring at me, and I was like, I remember thinking, gosh, because he told me he had two sons. I don't have any children. I never had children. And I remember thinking, oh, nobody's going to want me. This brother's not going to want me. You know, I felt like, I just felt really bad. And then when you find out about my past, I'm going to scare him away. And I was just thinking, but I said, you know what? It's okay. But I automatically told him I had 20 years out of church, and he told me the same thing. He was out of church.
I'm going to have to interview him now.
I was telling him, hey, you know what? Brothers, you know?
Yeah.
So he has a beautiful testimony too. So we get married, brother. I think we're the only couple that came out of that married. Brother says that, oh my God, you know, brother says that. He's so like, such a happy person. And he was like, at that time I had blonde hair. He's llévate la güera. I was like, it was a good time. And so we get married, and I was more than willing to move anywhere because, you know, it was harder for him because of his boys. And so, yeah, that's how I came to San Diego. I've had huge blessings. The Servant of God's birthday that I went, 2019 in May. I remember that Sister Dina Trejo of East LA was working the library. I don't know if she's still there, the library in Guadalajara. So I said, you know what, I'm going to go see if I see her there and help out. So yes, I helped out, and I had a huge blessing because the Servant of God drove by, and he was waving at us, and I remember I was jumping, and I was so happy, like, and then he came back, and then that day I saw him like 6 times, brother. I was counting them. And very close. And then when on his birth, on that main day, he was walking out, you know, walking on the ramp. And I remember I was going like this, and he had already passed me, and he turns back directly at looking at my hand. And I was like, I was so shocked. And I don't know. He just looks like, he was like, who knows what God allowed you to see, because, you know, he was like, he's just looking, and then he's just, you know, then he turned away, he's waving, and I was just so happy. And then, and then we're outside, and he's walking around the Glorieta because, you know, brothers had baked him cakes and stuff.
Oh yeah.
And I remember I went on, when you go to the downstairs, that area where so there's bushes, you know, and so he was standing right there because there was a setup right there with a group of brothers, the tent and the cake and stuff. And I remember I was going like this, like looking at him. He was just like literally down there, but in his love, you know, that he gives each and every brother their attention. Yes, it was their time now. It was their attention now. So he wouldn't look up, but I know he knew that I was looking at him, you know. And I was just watching him, and he was like, I'm talking to the brothers there, and I was just looking at him like, oh my God, it's beautiful. And I was just enjoying the moment. And that was really beautiful. Another thing that I want to mention, when during the time before this was I think after the Santa Cena, I remember that one day I woke up. That day I was going to go to the 9 a.m. prayer with Sister Delia, and I woke up from a dream, a beautiful dream, that the servant of God Samuel, he was in the temple in East LA, that first. So that first street, he was running down to me with he had a brown suit and a white shirt, I remember, and he was running to me with his arms open, full speed, running to me, but I guess he was on air. And I was standing on the other end, like more towards where the park is, Belvedere. And I was standing there like this, and he's running to me, running. And when he gets to me, he hugs me. We hug each other. And I woke up and I was like, sister, I just dreamt the servant of God Samuel, and he was hugged me, and it was so beautiful. And then the week after the servant of God's prayer, and then when that whole situation happened, that same week I dreamt the servant of God Naasón, where he was in my home, and he was telling me, my mom was standing there like a soldier, and she was like, he came directly at me, and he held my hand, and he said, God bless you. And when our hands were holding, I wanted to let him, I didn't want to hold it anymore because I didn't want to hurt him. So I like wanted to let go, like carefully, but there was this magnet. I could see the magnet that was stretching, and it came back, and it just stayed together. And that's how I woke up. And so,
beautiful.
That's
when was that?
This was
dream vision?
That dream was the week that the servant of God would happen, you know, with that was after his birthday, 2019 in May.
Oh, okay.
June,
I was thinking it happened in 2014 before you returned.
No, this was
okay.
This was in 2019.
Okay. Wow, sister, a lot of beautiful testimonies there.
Yes.
What would you say to those? You know, you mentioned about those of us that have distanced ourselves for some time and come back, how you rejoiced in that moment so much, as you are obviously still to this day. I think a lot of the younger generation, I could only imagine that a lot of their struggle is the not knowing what's out there and not understanding, more than anything, not understanding how horrible a life we could live without God in our lives. And again, I want to mention that I'm not saying that when we leave the Light of the World Church that everything goes bad for us, because for not everybody it does. For some that have left previously as members of the Light of the World Church, they've left and things go well for them. But for some like yourself, who experienced all the hardships that you did, and the Lord allowed you to make it back, again, I want to take advantage of the opportunity. And I don't know how many times those dealing with those thoughts of, you know, or not seeing, not understanding the risks involved upon distancing ourselves from the love of God. I don't know how many times they can hear advice, like, I'm going to ask, you know, what might you say to them? I mean, God helped them to understand, but sometimes it's like we hear say, you don't understand what you have until you've lost it. It's too late, you know. And I mentioned it on previous interviews and podcasts, where, you know, sometimes they don't make it back. You said it yourself. You know, some that lost their lives out there, having previously had this opportunity. What would you say to them, sister?
I would say,
like, I think because the thought is, well, I'm not going to go that far. Those things won't happen to me.
Yeah. So the enemy is going to try to lie to you in every way, where you're going to think it's the truth. If distancing yourself from God, he's going to distance himself from you. And so, let me see, I'm trying to put myself in that situation where someone is about to, let's say, try something. Don't do it. Don't do it, because it's okay. So many people who follows advice from others, many don't, but in these times that are even harder, listen to that message. Try to listen to that message. It's real. It's not, oh, you don't know, or let me live my life. No, it's real. It's real. You don't know where it can take you, but it's definitely not going to take you to anything good. It's going to take you to, even for some people that have left the church, like you said, and they don't fall like into drugs and stuff, they still do well. Their mentality is still not good before the Lord. Their mentality is still away from the Lord, and they fall into a lot of dangers where maybe one day they can fall into drugs and stuff like that. And so, like the sister, like the sister said in one of the podcasts, like you mentioned earlier, just once, if you try once, that's it. Because, and then even worse, there's some of us that can't handle our bodies, our minds, you can't handle it, and you just never come back down from that. You just you stay out there, even from the first time. And as I look at this whole project that Brother Leo's doing, it's for a purpose. It's to give you a warning, to help you as well, to give you a warning and to see what I mean, many people want to listen to the bad things, but what about the good things? What if, to the listeners, if some people may reject, oh, you know what, this is not true. But why don't you give yourself the opportunity? What if it is true?
Yeah.
Why don't you allow that opportunity? Yeah. And that's what I've always thought, like, don't reject it, or just as the same as you think, what if it's not true? Well, what if it is true?
Right.
And so, the world has nothing good to offer. The world, what has done to me, I had trouble even speaking and coming back to society. I couldn't speak. I couldn't express myself. I would stutter. And so either way, the world's going to damage you, whether it's the way you think or physically or in any way. You're not going to be yourself anymore. Don't just.
Yeah. So we invite the listeners, not of our faith, to come and discover, come and see for yourself. Don't take second, third, fourth hand or more other people's opinions and thoughts about us here in the Light of the World Church, because you're hearing firsthand, again, from another active and current member who's testifying of now her happiness and joy in the Light of the World Church. Decisions made on her own to not only be here, but to remain here, to return here. Do you think you could have found what you have here, sister, at any other church?
No, definitely not. Especially knowing that there has to be a man of God, and there's nowhere else where there's a man of God but in this path of the Lord. That's the main thing for me.
Yeah, I was going to ask you, based on that, if you recall the man of God, the Apostle Lord said, because many identify us as a Christian church, which we are. We follow the teachings of Jesus Christ. We're following his example, because our hope and goal is to arrive where he's at. Mm-hmm. So, yeah, we are Christians. But the Apostle Lord made it very clear and said, we're not just another Christian church. He mm-hmm. said, we are the church of Jesus Christ. Mm-hmm. Now, speaking in a singular and a unique form. And I was thinking earlier, because sometimes as I'm driving or around the house, sometimes I'll put on like Christian radio in my truck or on Pandora or something, you know. One of my all-time favorite Christian singers is Lauren Daigle. Matter of fact, the the intro music that Brother Gabriel Figueroa Jr. created for me is a replica of one of her tracks. But in hearing those other Christians, because they believe in Christ in the manner which they all do, and you know, they speak of God's grace, they speak of Jesus Christ, and every other Christian faith-based podcast and radio talk show, whatever. I wanted to ask you, because I always invite the listeners to look for one of our churches that is closest to them, knowing that we're in many places now, not only in the U.S., but in so many other countries. What is the one thing that you could tell them that they might find different in the Light of the World Church that they won't find anywhere else and any other Christian type church? You mentioned the Apostle of the Lord.
Yes.
But even on that note, I mean, if you go to Google right now and you Google search for apostles, you're going to find many other individuals with the title of apostle, both male and female. So I don't know what could we say to the listeners, not of our faith, that if they were to come to our church, they might find something different here with us, you know?
Well, this church is the Church of Christ is of good order, of perfect order. I have been watching or running, not watching, but running into videos on Instagram where they make fun of, like, in their own people in their own churches. They record all when a scenario, when you're in church, and then there's this little girl and doing signs like looking around, or they're making fun of their own music or all this stuff. It's in this church, there's respect, major respect to God. It's a church of order. It's a church of you're gonna find where we give the reverence to God. I would say it's a church of where you express your heart to the Lord, and it's not for everyone else to hear, but you on your own, and you kneel down, and the very first thing you're going to see, it's order.
Yeah.
The men on one side, the women on the other side. You respect when the brother is speaking. It's you just feel it. You just feel that what's the word?
Well, I think you said it already. The reverence, the respect, that we have for the house of the Lord. So sounds like you're mentioning the order that they'll find in our temples, in our church prayer services, worship services. And yeah, it's visible in our seating arrangement. It's visible in our attire. It's visible in the fact, or audible in the fact, that you're not going to hear the ministers or whoever's speaking, if it's a member or whatever, you're not going to hear jokes.
No, exactly.
It's not a form of entertainment, but yeah, so it's these. And what could we say of the choirs, sister? You mentioned how much you rejoiced. You referred to them as hearing like voices of angels when you were hearing that, How Great Thou Art song again, which is not even of the Light of the World Church, but we've adopted it because the lyrics they're in line with our faith and our beliefs. But yeah, I mean, what can we say about our choirs? How beautiful they sing. When, as I was talking again with Sister Esley, We mentioned how important it is when the choirs, or how beautiful it is when the choirs are singing their songs, and there's a spiritual consecration there. Just like when before you sang your song, that first time you said you consecrated, you know. These are all beautiful things that they'll find, any visitor may find different when they visit one of our churches.
Yes, and our prayers are, you pray on your own. Like they may say, okay, we're gonna do our prayer of reconciliation. It's not, they're not gonna tell you what to tell God. It's what your heart feels, what you feel. It's a communication with God and you, where through in the name of the Lord Jesus Christ, where God, and because of the love to his apostle, and God is able to hear our prayers where you're expressing your heart to him. Well, you can tell him anything that you want, and in the way that you want to say to him, in humbleness, of course. The choir, by the grace of God, now I'm in the choir. And the choir, it's something that we're supposed to we're supposed to live consecrated and lift the church up, lift there's so that they can perceive the songs, that the words, the lyrics, everything that we sing to the Lord, so that the church can also feel it and meditate. And it's so beautiful when the choir is united and the church feels it, you know. And that's another reason why God permitted me, I think, to come back, because when I received when I was like 13, I believe, like about a week before I turned 14. And I remember I promised God that I would be in the choir for the rest of my life. So the choir is something beautiful. And if you come to our church, you're gonna notice the difference. You're gonna notice the difference. You're gonna feel, you're just gonna feel different, because we're not singing for the man, we're singing to God.
Amen.
Yes.
Amen. God pay you, sister. I'm sure you have a lot more to share, but we better start winding this down.
Yes.
Well, sister, I also had a lot more questions, but for the sake of time,
Yes.
one last thing I'm going to do is pull I have here 4 different cards in my hand. That's either going to be a stanza from one of our hymns or a quote from one of the apostles of the Lord. I'm going to read it and you tell me what comes to mind. How's that?
Yes.
September 28, 2019. A quote from the apostle of the Lord, our brother Naason, Joaquin, Garcia. Said, "We in our affliction say, God does exist. Sometimes he tests us, but we are in the hollow of his hand." Los Angeles, California, September 28, 2019.
That reminds me, last year I had, right around the Holy Supper time, the August for Guadalajara, I was going through an affliction, a really, really strong moment. And I remember that it was so bad that my stomach felt like it's turned, you know, when you feel in your stomach, like,
yeah.
And I remember I was here in my house, and I couldn't take that feeling. It was too strong. And I said, I'm going to pray. I got down on my knees and I cried to the Lord, and I said, help me in this, give me the strength. I got up. I was feeling the same. The next day, the same thing. I prayed again, several times a day. I was in my house. I was praying. And of course, when I would go to the temple, then again, 4 days, brother, it took 4 days until that 4th time when I knelt down, and I happened to be around noon. I was in my home. When I got up, I felt that strength.
Mm.
So God allowed me to feel that for those days.
Yeah.
And then he gave me that strength. But he was waiting. I feel that because he wants us to be patient.
Yes.
He wants us to be patient. When we pray to him and we say, okay, we're going to wait for you, not when I want. So that reminds me of when we go through struggles, afflictions, we know that at any moment or at God's moment, he's going to answer us. And that's what holds us. We have that hope. We hold on to that hope. We know he's going to answer us.
Yes.
And he's going to answer us in the way that he wants to. And if he wants us to continue in that struggle, he's going to give us the strength to continue in that struggle.
Amen. Reminds me of what you said earlier, how remembering the Apostle Lord's words where he says the Lord answers our prayers and petitions in a manner that's most beneficial for us.
Exactly.
With regards to our spiritual goals in life.
Exactly. Yes.
Yeah. Well, God pay you, sister. I don't know if you have anything else to add. I know you said at the beginning you were nervous. Obviously, that's no more of an issue.
Yeah.
Yes.
I think that's. I mean, there's so much, but that we already. Just one more thing that I remembered, and this is just to show how God works in your life. And for those who are trying to come back, if you're seeing or hearing or are living certain situations where you think they're out of the ordinary, it's God trying to call you, And I remember a few days before I came back to church, God was already like working in my heart, and you have to listen to that. If God starts working in you, listen to that and make that decision, because we're here to we're waiting for you. I rejoice when brothers that especially when they've been out of church and they come back. I rejoice so much, even if I've never seen them in my life, because it feels so beautiful. It feels so beautiful. You're my family. You're part of my family. And even if you're out there, you're my family, and we want you. We miss you. And so I remember I was singing Adiós mundo que hasta ayer estuve en ti. I was fully hard because I was like, I'm not here with you anymore, world. I'm with God now,
Yeah.
But yes, listen to that. I just want to say, listen to because God speaks to the man in different ways, but we don't listen, whether it's through a dream and so we're waiting for you. Yes.
Amen. I forgot to ask you, sister, were you baptized before you left, or you baptized when you came back?
No, I baptized before at 14.
Oh, okay. Okay. Well, again, here's another beautiful testimony. And I know Sister Marisol, you did share some very dark, difficult experiences. But as we remember again, it's when we're not living a life that's close to God when we experience those things. Now, obviously, even as members of the Light of the World Church, we go through difficult situations, things normal in life. I mentioned previously job losses, illnesses, accidents, and so many different things. But there are a lot of painful and difficult situations that the Lord liberates us from just because we are serving him and we are living a life that's according to his doctrine. And that's what we desire that others come to get to know a little better. Don't just look at us and make a judgment on your own from a distance. Come inside. Don't be afraid. Don't be nervous. Come inside any one of our temples and get to know us a little better and discover for yourself what beautiful doctrine exists in the Light of the World Church, as it is revealed to the apostles that lead and guide the church in this era, by grace of God, our brother Naason, Joaquin, Garcia.
Amen.
So, sister, if there's nothing else you have to add, I want to tell you, as I've told everyone else, we've been taught by the men of God to just desire each other, blessing and prosperity.
Amen.
The Lord continue helping you and your husband in his path. And God pay you again for allowing me to capture your testimony. and share it with the entire world.
Amen. God pay you, brother, and God bless you and your family as well.
Amen, sister. For those of you that are still with us, we invite you now to visit us online at the Light of the World Church's official website at TLOTW.org. And we also invite you to visit us at any Light of the World temple and place of worship that is closest to you. We preside our prayer services daily at 5 a.m., 9 a.m., and in the evening, 6:37, depending where you're at, Monday through Saturday, and on Sundays at 5 a.m., 10 a.m., and 5 or 6 p.m., also depending on each location. In Spanish, you can find us, our temples, by searching for La Luz del Mundo, for a church that is closest to you. And for any Light of the World Church member tuning in, I also invite you to contact me if you have a testimony you'd like to share regarding how the Light of the World Church and its doctrine has impacted and changed your life. Other than that, again, God pay you, sister, and God bless.
Amen.
We'll be in touch.
God bless you, brother.
Amen. To all our listeners, may the Lord reward you and bless you for tuning in. The goal of these conversations is to allow you to hear firsthand, directly from faithful members of the Light of the World Church, how its doctrine has changed us through personal and spiritual, life-changing experiences and triumphs. God bless you all for hearing.